Thank you so much, Mr. Martin, for coming and joining us today and allowing us to interview you. After working so hard and so long as a Canadian politician, and ultimately as the Prime Minister, what really happens when you're no longer in politics? And what factors determine what you do after you're finished being the Prime Minister?
I spend a lot of time in Africa, and I think we all understand the terrible poverty that exists over there. But when I'm over there, you know, there are Americans, Norwegians, Brits, French, all kinds of people trying to help in Africa. Well, none of those people are here because everybody looks at Canada and they say you're a rich country and you should be able to take care of your own issues of poverty, and they're absolutely right. So I think that the single most important Canadian issue in terms of social problems is certainly the future and the fate of young Aboriginal Canadians.
What did you really think when you met me for the first time, and why did you care to treat me so well as you did?
That a young person, you were that high, that a young person like that would see a homeless person, and that it would, and I know the story so well, and that it would bother them so that the next time you saw the homeless person, that you decided to do something about it. And you know, I think it was really that second. I think it's your decision that you wanted to do something about it, because so many of us, you know, we see an issue, we see a problem, we see something that touches us, but we forget it. We go back and we go to the movies or we do whatever the heck we happen to do. That's not what you did. You said, I'm going to do something about it. And that really is the difference between people who make things happen and those who simply watch the world go by. And I think, how could I not have been totally taken with you? I mean, you were, first of all, you were cute as a bundle. And, that little tiny girl was going to take on this huge social problem, and she was going to make a difference. I mean, it was, I'll never forget that day, and it's why I continue to watch what you do with such huge admiration.
What do you really think about poverty, both abroad and especially in Canada?
You know, I think it's unacceptable. I just don't think that in a rich country such as Canada, that we should have the levels of poverty that we have. Again, you know, when you go to Africa and you look at the history of Africa, you understand how it happened. It's not acceptable in Africa, and it never should have happened. And the colonial powers, you know, certainly left a terrible, terrible legacy in their wake when they left Africa. But at least you understand that happened. Well, I mean, in this country, there is no excuse for poverty. There are people who are for whom life is going to turn not well. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. There's nothing much that we can do about it. But this country has the means and the capacity to take people through this. And what we're doing, unfortunately, in Canada, is we are continuing to essentially impose that level of poverty on young Canadians and not giving them a chance to rise above it. There just is no excuse for the levels of poverty that we have in a country as rich as this.
Speaking from your heart, what do you want Canadian children to know about?
If there were more people like you, government can only do so much. I think government can do a great deal more than what it's doing. But in the end, it can only do so much, because so much of poverty is local. So much of poverty requires a helping hand, requires an individual to reach across. And if there were more people like you, Hannah, then that situation wouldn't be there. I mean, that what government could do would bring forth the programs, but in the end, it's one person helping another person. One person, you know, you've described to me the loneliness that the homeless feel. Well, no government can take away that loneliness. The only person who can take away that loneliness is another human being reaching across and saying, I understand and can I help? And that's what you did. So I think what it really is you know, individuals, an awful lot of people like you, and then very strong government programs which say that we're not going to allow these levels of poverty to continue.
What made you decide to be a politician?
The fact of the matter is that you can do more in 5 minutes in government than you can do in 5 minutes outside of government, because government has the capacity to basically say, this is a good program. This is going to help people. Or, in fact, government can say that this is the right kind of foreign policy, or it's the right kind of policy for health care or for education. And so government's incredibly important, and anybody who thinks that it isn't It's just wrong. The role of government is to give people like yourself the tools and the instruments to basically help other people, or to make this a better world, or to discover one of the great discoveries. The role of government is to enable people to succeed. And then there are some people like you who say, well, I'm not going to wait for government to enable me, I'm going to do it on my own. But just think what you can do if you're working with government and they say, well, we're going to help you. And I think so. I think that's what it's all about. I mean, what is life all about? We're given this geography. We're given the natural resources, the oil and gas, the mining. We're given the great wheat fields. We're given all of this. This is what God gave us when we came to this country. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? And what are you going to do about it is really, in my opinion, the ultimate question that has to be asked. And the answer is the kind of thing that you're doing, or the kinds of things that other people out there who are helping people do.
Tell us about your foundation.
Well, when I came out of government, as we talked about at the very beginning, I wanted to continue on with the issues that had me go into government and I dealt with when I was Prime Minister and when I was Finance Minister. And I took a look at the Aboriginal issue in this country. This is the highest level of poverty. I mean, in the country are Aboriginal Canadians, the highest level of grade school and high school dropouts, the highest level of diabetes, the highest level of tuberculosis on almost any social issue. And it is a national disgrace. And I said, look, maybe what I could do is, as one person, I can make a difference. And just as you decided as one person that you could make a difference. And that's why I decided I was going to focus really on the issues of really Aboriginal education. Because if a young person gets the education, then they have the real shot at doing whatever it is in life they want to do. But it's so important that they get it.
Why did you choose this issue?
It's the single most important social issue in Canada. That's to say, I mean, all kinds of Canadians have major problems. But the fact is that on almost every major problem, Aboriginal Canadians are unfortunately leading the band, whether it be in youth suicide, whether it be in youth incarceration, whether, as I mentioned, the major diseases, tuberculosis, diabetes, AIDS, all of these issues are focused in one segment of the population. But that one segment of the population is the youngest, and it's the fastest growing in the country. And it's just morally wrong. It's unspeakable that we would allow young people who have no cause to be in those terrible situations. It's not their fault. They were born into this situation, that we don't give them the tools and the ability to come out of it. And I just think it's wrong. And I think that I just don't think that in a country as rich as ours, we can tolerate it.
And why do you think it is tolerated? And why do you think that those who are First Nations are affected so greatly?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think that we tolerate the fact that there are homeless people? Why do you think that's the case? How do you think that's occurred?
I think that, well, just like you said, it should not be tolerated at all. And it comes from the first place, not understanding it is a huge part of it. If you don't understand it, you aren't able to help, therefore it's tolerated. Do you think that would be also relative to the First Nations?
No doubt about
issues?
it. I think that your answer is dead on. You don't understand why they're in that situation. And probably you also sort of say to yourself, if I ignore it, it won't bother me and I can pretend it never happened. It's not happening. But I think that, Hannah, almost every one of the questions that you ask me, I could ask them back to you. And the answer that you give will probably be a lot better than mine, but it would be the answer. It would be the answer to both issues.
What are your hopes and dreams for your grandchildren?
I think one of them is I hope they meet you. I hope they meet you, and I would think it would be wonderful if, when they're in grade 9, they were doing what you're doing. And if that were the case, I would be very proud of my grandchildren.
Do you worry about our country?
I don't worry that as a country that we're not going to do well. I worry that as a country we're not going to do as well as we should and we could for as many people as we should and we could.